You can never have too much pitching. That old adage was first cited in print in 1940 and is going to be tested as the Braves deal with both Max Fried and Kyle Wright and what are expected to be long stints on the injured list. This is Battery Power TV, Cory McCartney and Grant McAuley as always. And Grant, Atlanta holds the biggest division lead in baseball. And for what lies ahead with this pitching conundrum, that could well come in handy.
Yeah, it always comes in handy to be the team that's being chased, I think, more than doing the chasing, although doing the chasing has worked out just fine for the Braves the last couple of years. But yeah, you knew it was going to be a challenge when you saw that Kyle Wright landed on the injured list, and then you saw Max Fried followed not too long after that. You started just kind of doing the math of how do you fill in not just 40% of your rotation, but two guys that last year, Cy Young runner-up in the National League and Fried, 21-game winner in Kyle Wright. I mean, those are not easy losses to overcome. And the Braves' depth is going to be tested in big-time ways. So, yeah, that saying might have been first cited in print in 1940, but I'll bet there's a manager or a few baseball people prior to that that probably thought or said some version of that saying.
Yeah, it probably goes all the way back to Moses if we're going to talk about on something of this nature. I mean, that's baseball, right? You can never have too much of this, and this is the one commodity that we thought the Braves had a ton of going into the season, but now Max Fried has a forearm strain. Kyle Wright is dealing with his second IL stint with a shoulder issue. Thankfully, with Spencer Strider, Charlie Morton, and the emergence of Bryce Elder, there aren't further questions of the rotation, but the Braves are going to have to piece this thing together for what could be a long stretch. And considering they've both been shut down, I mean, it's likely they'll be starting their spring training programs all over again. And if it's very realistic that as they build back up, they could be out until after the All-Star break. And as Kyle Wright said, it could be even longer with him considering he's on the IL for the second time. So the question becomes, Grant, how do they piece this thing together? Now, the Braves still have TBD for their Sunday starter in Toronto for this upcoming season. Now, Michael Soroka making his long-awaited return and in Canada for the Maple Maddox would have been a great storyline, but he pitched Thursday for AAA Gwinnett, giving up 3 runs, including a home run in 4 innings, so that's not happening. Jared Schuster started Wednesday and gave up 4 runs on 7 hits. Dylan Dodd pitched on Tuesday. He allowed 8 hits with 7 runs and 3 homers for the Stripers. The timing makes him the most logical to cap that Blue Jays series. I'll put it to you like this. Do the Braves currently have enough starting pitching to weather things until Fried and Wright are back in the fold?
I don't know if the answer to that question is an emphatic yes, but I think so. But you'd like to have more of I think, just more of a concerted effort or answer behind that, or maybe just a little bit more confidence in that answer. Anyway, it's hard to say because you know that the return of Michael Soroka is one of the big storylines. But as I've talked about time and again, while I think it is growing closer, and while I think losing both Fried and Wright simultaneously here for what could be, at least a month, if not 2, maybe a little bit longer in the case of Wright, we're not really sure yet. Max Fried, when I talked to him the other day, said it's not really a timetable thing for him just yet, but I think we know that, he's going to be shut down from throwing for multiple weeks. Then he's going to have to build back up. And then you have to hope that everything is just healed up for him. And the same thing, of course, for Kyle Wright on top of that. So, yeah, you've got Jared Schuster. You've got Dylan Dodd. I don't think we've seen from Schuster exactly what you may have hoped for when you saw what he was doing in the spring. For Dylan Dodd, it's kind of been a mixed bag a little bit. I'm not necessarily spooked by a bad minor league start because those are going to happen from time to time. But when you do think about facing a lineup like the Blue Jays, that can be a little bit disconcerting if you're giving up a handful of home runs, because that's a lineup that certainly knows how to hit home runs. But for the next 2 months, I'm not sure if they, do or don't. I guess we're going to all find out together. Might be the easiest way to answer this question. But Soroka, to me, is the big wild card, and that's the one I would want to focus on the most if he can find that way. And I know the Braves don't want to rush him. They want to put him in a position to succeed. And I know we're talking about a long-term comeback that's in its 3rd year now. As far as the storytelling and the build for this is concerned, there's going to be a pretty big ovation when he does take the field at Truist Park again. Could that be in the upcoming homestand if he is able to go out and show the Braves what they need to see in his next start or 2 in Gwinnett? By the time they get home, maybe we're talking about this in a little bit different light. I think you almost, you hate to use the term, but maybe it's the most baseball term of them all. I think the Braves rotation right now is kind of day to day, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Michael Soroka, this long-term storytelling, that's the stuff that we usually quantify for the squared circle. But GM, that's right. GM Alex Anthopoulos said it, though. Trade season doesn't really begin until after the All-Star break. So the possibilities of the Braves going out and adding another starting pitcher right now is excruciatingly slim. The answers are going to have to come internally. And I think best case scenario, I'm with you. I think it's that Soroka makes his return, and we're talking about needing to get creative with one rotation spot during this stretch. But I mean, Soroka's thrown more than 4 innings once. He just threw 4 innings on Thursday for the Stripers. Workload is obviously an issue for a guy that's had exactly 59 and 2/3 innings since 2020. Building up to him being a guy that you can rely upon every 5th day is going to take time. And I don't think the fact that 2 of your main starters are on the IL right now is going to push anybody's hand in that regard. There's just no easy solution, but the Braves do have a number of in-house options, as we talked about. And I go back to it, and we wondered during spring training how this whole thing was going to work out. You know, obviously who you already had in place, Soroka, Schuster, Dodd. You can never have too much pitching, and it's because of situations, Grant, exactly like this.
Yeah, exactly like this. You throw in Ian Anderson having to have Tommy John surgery. They brought back Colby Allard to be kind of another layer of that depth. I know he hasn't necessarily put up the numbers at the major league level that you would lead you to believe that he'll solve this problem, but he's not an option thanks to that oblique strain. I believe he's just started throwing. So you just don't have some of the layers that you wanted to have if and when something did not go according to plan, like losing Max Fried to the injured list, which has already happened twice now this year. Losing Kyle Wright to the injured list, which, again, has already happened twice this year. So it's not just filling the one spot in rotation, and we can talk about the Soroka return and how much that will mean when that does happen, but this is 2 spots in rotation, to your point. I still think that they have 3 candidates that could help them get by for a certain amount of time, but there is not really a great scenario for a trade at this time of the season. I've had a lot of people throw a lot of different scenarios at me online, and I'm thankful that some of them are not the general manager of the Atlanta Braves Baseball Club. And then on some of the other ones, it's just either not the timing or it's just not a solution that's viable. I know some people have thrown around the name of Madison Bumgarner. I don't really see that as being much of a solution. Clearly, if there was tread left on that tire, I don't think he'd be out there and available to begin with. So, yeah, stranger things have happened, like former Brave Robinson Cano from a year ago. But I'm just not really sure that that's something that's going to solve this problem either. But, maybe there is somebody out there I'm just not thinking of that could be part of this equation. But as of right now, as far as expecting a trade or somebody to walk through the door that's going to be able to solve one or both of these spots in rotation, this just isn't quite trade season yet. And with the expanded playoffs and the amount of clubs that just kind of have decided that they want to find out where they are then, and the fact that the clubs that might be doing the selling want to wait for that fever pitch around the trade deadline before they cash in their chips, this doesn't really bode well for any team that's trying to add into a position of need right now, like the Atlanta Braves and the starting rotation without 2 of their stalwarts.
So this conversation dovetails into this weekend series against the Blue Jays because the state of the rotation is obviously going to be front and center on Sunday in that series finale. Things start Friday with Spencer Strider against Chris Bassett, Bryce Elder, and Jose Barrios on Saturday, with Uzi Kikuchi on Sunday, with the Braves yet to announce again their starting pitcher. Where's your head at as the Braves hit the Great Wide North?
I think the big thing is you're going to see 2 clubs that are capable of scoring a lot of runs, and who's going to be able to do the run prevention, both defensively and on the mound. I mean, you love your chances when you're the Atlanta Braves and you have Spencer Strider on the mound. Clearly, Bryce Elder has figured out a way to navigate through some big league lineups and give the Braves a chance to win, pitching into the 6th inning in each of his starts so far this year. And even dating back to last year, he's been on quite a good roll of at least getting the Braves a chance to win and not having the bullpen overtaxed on days that he starts. So knock on wood, you want to see that continue. You'd love to see one of those dominant outings from Spencer Strider. I believe this is his first look at Toronto. Maybe that will work in his favor to go against a club, even one as powerful as the Blue Jays. It's just not familiar with him. So you have a chance to, I think, win a series right there. But the Braves offense is also going to have to show up. You're going to make sure you get all those bats through customs because they're going to need, I think, all the runs they could get. I know Brian Snitker kind of joked about it. Well, if we knew that on the day that we're not going to have the pitching plan that we want, that we could just score a whole bunch of runs, if it was that easy, that's what we do. But that, of course, is not baseball. That's not life, and that's not how that's going to work. But Atlanta has got a very powerful lineup that's capable of jumping on an opponent early, and that, I think, has been one of their keys to success all year long.
Well, you mentioned it, a Cy Young runner-up a year ago, a 20-game winner a year ago. The Braves are down in total 7.9 worth of FWAR from a year ago in Fried and Wright. And I think that puts even more emphasis on each and every Spencer Strider start. I think he has got to be the guy. He's obviously been fantastic, ranking 5th in FWAR right now, has the major's highest K rate at just over 15 per 9. The next closest guy is 12.9 per 9. So that tells you how big of a lead he has there. Only 2 Blue Jays have seen him before. Brandon Belt Dalton Varsho, unfamiliarity and his electric stuff, that continues to be a recipe for trouble for the opposition. The Blue Jays have the third best team fastball runs above average. The Strider is fifth in that department among all starters. So it's going to be a fascinating matchup as he faces a very, very talented Toronto lineup. And obviously that's the guy you want out there setting the tone in this series. We've always got you covered here on BPTV, so be sure to subscribe, turn notifications, and help spread the word to keep this thing growing. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.